for our visitors, I'm Pastor Susan Ennis. I'm the Congregational Care Pastor here at Asbury Church. But as we said, the Higgs are joining us from Presbyterian Church in town, but they know Carolyn, and Carolyn invited them. So see, folks, invite. And this is not a church-specific event, right? Anyone is welcome. So tonight we are going to be talking about funeral planning, prepaying, pre-planning your celebration of life, that sort of thing. And just so you know, Steve and I did pay on ours. Ours is paid and done as of 2 weeks ago. So, I'm not talking about stuff that I'm not willing to put myself and my husband through. It's a really hard discussion, right? So we have our 2 natural-born daughters. Of course, Hannah, our oldest, lives in Scotland with her husband Jack and our grandkids. And then we have Megan, who is with her fiance in Hayesville, getting married in 2024. No grandkids out of that one. We're telling her to get on it. But then we have our bonus daughter, Kirby, and her husband Marshall, who live up in New York with the twins, who are going to be 2 this month. So how do you wrangle that out? Because I know Kirby, she's a funeral director like Annie, and if she's not involved in the planning of our celebration of life, she is going to be heartbroken. But our daughters and Kirby don't get along like sisters because they didn't grow up together. We only met Kirby here at Asbury Church 10 years ago. So she doesn't know my daughters that well. So you have to have these discussions. You have to plan these things out. You have to think ahead. Because there are people who are involved in your life who are maybe going to want to be a part of this, maybe want to write something down, share their ideas with you as well. Think beyond your immediate family, think beyond Asbury Church, your friends. Just because you're here at Asbury Church doesn't mean you have to have your celebration of life here. We go out to different gravesides for graveside services all the time. We go to different churches. All the funeral homes have a chapel or a worship space that we are willing to go to. So again, if you have something you want to do, and you like the look of somewhere, you may go out and visit Annie and Travis at Lakeview and love their space. Well, then that's where you should have your celebration of life. And folks, transportation, because the coroner has to come and, no, you all pick us up. So when my mom passed away, I know, that sounds terrible, sorry. When my mom passed away, the first person I called was Annie. And Annie called her gal who came out and got my mom in a very respectful and loving manner, picked my mom up, took her back to the funeral home. But then once they sort all that out there's a transportation fee to the church and back, which is fair enough. Gas is expensive, right? Do you want a funeral escort, right? You need an escort if you're going to do a big long procession from the church to your burial place. Where do you want to be buried? I found out that, all the different cemeteries in town have different rules and different regulations and different charges. So just, again, ask your questions. Go look now. Because if you wait, it may be too late. I know that sounds really morbid, but we're being honest here. Like I said last week, last year we buried someone who was 20, and we buried someone who was 43. We are not promised tomorrow. We've buried people, we've had celebrations of life here for everyone from 20, I've even done, celebrations for folks who have lost babies. Right? So, folks, this is a whole thing. Your age doesn't define when you're going to go. God tells us when he's ready, and we want to be ready. And the more that you can take off your kids' plates, the easier it's going to be, even on your spouse. I love my husband. If something happens to him tomorrow, I am still going to be absolutely floored. If something happens to him when we're 90, I'm still going to be absolutely floored. And to have everything set up in an order is going to make it so much easier on me. So just think about that as Annie. So And I'm terrible. Here I haven't even introduced my friends. So this is Annie Morris. She is the general manager out at Lakeview on the east side, but she works with the Dignity Funeral Association here in Wichita. They have, well, I'll let you guys tell us. You know all your locations. And then this is Travis. He works with the pre-need side of things, helping you with the financial side of things. He's the one we signed all the paperwork with. And so I'm going to let them do what they do, and they know it all best anyway. So Annie and Travis.
I'm going to start with a video, and then I'll go into introducing what we do. Hopefully this is not too loud when I start.
Oh, top row.
What defines us? Are we our job, our possessions, or even our accomplishments? When someone thinks of us, is it our trophies they'll remember? No. When someone we love passes, it's usually not the big things we miss the most. Rather, it's the details. It's all the irreplaceable little things. Things other people may never have even noticed, that taken together make up the complex, subtle, and unique mosaics of the people we love. The way they laughed hardest when they told a joke. The way they conveyed comfort with just a touch. The way they bit their lip while they were reading. And we miss the scent of their cologne on their shirts. It's the details that made them special. It's the details that matter most. To them and to us. For us, the details aren't just little things. They're everything. Because in our business, first impressions last forever. There are no second chances, no dress rehearsals, and no reset buttons. We need to get every detail right the first time, every time, to create a remembrance that is worthy, reflecting the values, character, and traditions of the families we serve, no matter what they may be. A life well celebrated is one in which every detail is remembered. That is our promise. That is our passion. That is our purpose. And from it, we shall never waver. With every wish fulfilled, with every detail remembered, they are honored with dignity.
All right, so like Pastor Susan said, I'm Travis Kegley. I'm the assistant sales manager at Lakeview Funeral Home. I take care of all 5 locations here in Wichita. You might know us as Lakeview, Rest Haven, DeVores, Flanagan, Hunt, Hillside right down the street, and then we also have Advantage Funeral Services. Annie is our general manager here at Lakeview. You've been in the business for?
Going on 24 years with our company, with Dignity Memorial, and I'm also a licensed funeral director for that amount of time too. So I funeral direct, and I also am the general manager too.
So thank you for inviting us to come speak with you tonight. It is a very sensitive subject, just like Pastor Susan said, because not everybody wants to talk about this, but it is something that we do need to talk about because it is part of life, just like living. Passing away is part of God's plan for us. And so, we need to be ready for that, for our families, for our loved ones, so that they're not left with the burden of taking care of making the decisions and also making sure that they're having to pay for things right away. Because a lot of people don't realize, when somebody passes away, a funeral home or cemetery, they need to be paid right away. They're not going to allow you to put it on payments typically. However, we do now have care credit that we do offer. But what I want to do is kind of go through what our provider benefits are, what is for, what you need for a funeral, what you need for cremation, anything. And at the end, I will take whatever questions you have, and then and we'll go from there. So one thing that's in your packets here tonight, there is a how would you rank life events? But first of all, I'm going to start a video.
And while Travis is looking that up real quick, I'm going to add a couple little things just now. As usual, we aren't promoting that this is the only funeral home, here in Wichita, that, we're promoting them. You have the promotion materials in front of you if you want them. Don't feel like you have to go to them. We are just wanting to have Annie and Travis help us navigate so that wherever you go, you ask the right questions, you're knowledgeable about what you're thinking of. I suggest, just like I'm going to with attorneys, with assisted living, wherever, go in advance. Get 3-4 different consultations from 3 or 4 different places, and then figure out who you want to deal with. But I'm going to be super honest and a little crass. When it comes to funerals and funeral planning, like everything else, you're going to get what you pay for. And if you want great service and your family to be really well taken care of, it's going to cost you a little bit more. There is a certain funeral home that advertises that they have super cheap services. They don't. That's their bottom line. They're going to nickel and dime you and check off all these other boxes as you go through this process, and you're going to end up paying as much, if not more, than you did for some of the more reputable places in town. So without naming names, just be very careful. Please be very careful who you sign up with and the things that you choose. So that's just my personal opinion after going through this. So, does it not want to work for you?
It will.
It's
That's okay. I'll skip that part.
Travis knows how to wing it. I'll give it back to him.
Sure.
We'll improvise.
So the one thing about the video that was going to play is it talked about, planning ahead. Of course, that's what we're here to talk about. The one thing that people don't realize that is how easier it makes the process when you're sitting there with a funeral director, taking care of the questions that are asked of you, that you have everything kind of laid out for yourselves. If, let's say, somebody were to pass away tomorrow and you don't have anything taken care of, a lot of people don't even ask their spouse, if they want to be cremated or buried. And so it's up in the air with, whatever they want to do. That's not fair at all, because honestly, to make sure that you guys, move from step to step, you want to make sure that you're having that conversation with each other, because it can be an easy conversation or easier conversation when you guys are here to be able to make that decision together. But when you're left alone to make all those decisions, a lot of times we end up either overspending, or it's at a time where we can't afford to do anything. So it makes it a lot harder on us, and especially when it gets down to the time where people are retired and you kind of have a fixed income, it makes it harder. And so what I have on the screen here is the same thing that you guys have in your book with the how to rank listings. So as you're looking through the listings that are on that sheet right there, it actually says, how would you rank these in order? Divorced, death of a loved one, death of a spouse, loss of job, marriage, personal injury. There we go. So there was actually a study done at the University of Kentucky about what are the most stressful events, and if you guys have thought death of a spouse as being number one, that is. Divorce would be number two, and then three, death of a loved one, which I think those could be flip-flopped anywhere because losing somebody is a major stressor in life. Personal injury, of course, marriage and loss of job. So those are just kind of little statistics that they put out for us for stressors in life. So if somebody were to pass away, of course, like what I said a minute ago, is what now? What has been planned? What hasn't been planned? Who do I call? Just like was said before, is if you were to pass away, of course, you would need, somebody were to pass away at home, of course, you need to call 911. If you're in a hospital, of course, the nurses would call a funeral home, but you need to know what funeral home you want to go to, whether it's one of our funeral homes or one of the other funeral homes here in town. Whatever your choice is, that's the right choice for you. How do you want to be remembered? Is it important to have that life celebration, for your family? Because that is a big part of what we do, is doing everything to remember the ones that we love. That part of every detail remember, that's actually our motto. So we want to make sure that every life is celebrated and that we are doing everything at the utmost dignity and honor on our part, and making sure that this is honored for your loved ones, because we have one chance of doing this. There's no redo on a funeral. There's a one time, you get one. And then, of course, where do I start? And what you do is you start with somebody like me, where I can sit down, we can talk about different options, whether you want to be cremated, whether you want to have a celebration of life, of traditional burial. So what we do is we protect our families, just like we do in any other situation. We plan for different events, so like college, weddings, education, retirement. If we were to be in an accident in our car, we all have car insurance. Most of us have health insurance and life insurance. So wouldn't it be, logical to actually plan for something that is going to happen when we're planning for things that may happen? So of course, like I said, it's about protecting the ones we love. Making sure that we make all these decisions ahead of time, so you're not having to do it during a stressful time. We don't want to have to second guess what you would have wanted. So, if they you wanted to have a full burial, well, the kids think, well, we might just cremate you instead, or vice versa. Maybe you want to be cremated and they want to bury you. That's where it's, you have to be able to make sure that we're telling our loved ones what you want. Of course, what we do is we set aside everything in a prearranged funeral. It is a guaranteed prearranged funeral, so it locks in today's prices, so it saves inflation. So typically a funeral goes up about 10% a year, which if statistically that's about 7.5 years, it's doubled. So if you're looking at a $10,000 funeral today, in 7.5 years you're looking at $20,000. And what you do now is you actually lock it in at today's prices, so it doesn't ever go up. And so the way we do this is we sit down with you and we plan by going through our process of reflect, record, secure, and share. With reflecting, what we want to do is, how you wanted to be remembered, what you want your service to say about yourself, or how you want your family to be involved with that. Do you want to be buried? Do you want to be cremated? These are things that I keep saying over and over, but those are the major two questions: is cremation or burial, and then however you want to be celebrated beyond there. When it comes to cemetery spaces, there are many different options. Some people may not want to be buried in a cemetery. They may want to be cremated and put into what's called a niche. You could have a little house built. We do all sorts of different things. We could even put you underwater or shoot you to space. I mean, there's many different options that we have nowadays. Yeah.
Plant a
Yes,
tree.
plant a tree.
I don't want others.
No. So the next step, of course, is recording. And so what I have here, this is a personal planning guide. And so I brought one with me. So if you want one, we'll set up a time and you can get one of these from us. This is an invaluable tool. The funeral directors love it when everything's filled out in here because, of course, there's a page that is basically your vital statistics. This is about 95% of the questions she asks at the time of death. When it comes to doing a death certificate, it talks about your legacy, which helps with doing an obituary, all the way through genealogy. It goes through personal preferences for your services, for your cemetery, has your financial information in there. It has our provider benefits, which you guys also have a copy of those in here as well. Basically helps eliminate the guesswork for your family. And of course, it is a way to keep everything together in one place after everything's been taken care of course. We also do love taking care of our veterans, and we do offer a veterans planning guide as well. This has all your basically your 10 most important benefits as a veteran. So if you don't know what your VA benefits are, I can help you out with that. It also has, if you're missing your DD-214 or your markers,
Like your service
and
record.
those we can order, or even missing ribbons and awards, medals, And then with the VA benefit, of course, if you want to be in a national cemetery, your discharge papers get you into a national cemetery, your headstone or marker, a grave liner, and of course, burial. So if you want to be out there at Winfield. And then the third step, of course, is secure. So of course, funding options we do. Of course, you can pay in full. You can make payments. You can do insurance if you need to. And of course, locking in today's prices keeps you from the rising costs. This is about securing everything to make sure that the financial burden isn't what you leave your family. And then the fourth step, of course, is sharing. So it doesn't help anything if you take care of everything and you don't tell anybody you did it. I've had a couple people that have pre-planned with us and never told their children, and they end up finding a policy years later after they've passed away, and now they've already been had a service with another funeral home, but they never told their children that they've taken care of anything. So they've paid twice, and we only want you to pay once. So of course, make sure you put yourself in a safe place. You know where your documents are. You make sure that your religious, your legal, and your healthcare professionals know what's going on as well, because at some point, maybe you are the last one left, and so we want to make sure that all those that love you and know your plans as well. So of course, this is a wise decision that shows that you care. It provides you and your family with peace of mind, protects your loved ones from financial burden, ensures your arrangements reflect your wishes, and this is what puts us apart from some of the other funeral homes here in town. We do have a 100% service guarantee. That's our promise to you and your family that we are going to do everything to the utmost dignity and honor to make sure that that is a rememberable service, and we do everything to remember you the way they want to remember you. If we fall short, we want to hear about it, because every one of our families gets a survey on our services, and it goes to J.D. Power and Associates. We're the only funeral home company that has the Presidential Award for Service, and there's only 12 companies nationwide that actually carry that same award. One thing that we also offer is away from home protection. So if you travel to visit family, if you go out of the state, out of the country, we can actually bring you back here at no additional charge. I don't think people really realize how much it costs to get you back from a different country. She's done a service for a family that came back from Italy, and I think it was somewhere around $15,000
Yeah.
or more to get him home before any services were rendered. And of course, they were on vacation and nothing was planned, so they didn't have this. But with this plan, it actually brings you back here, and your family can see you before your services. We also have bereavement travel for your family that lives out of state or out of the country. We can help them get here. We offer grief support. We have a grief group that meets monthly. We offer grief materials to all of our families. We have a library of grief materials on our website and actually at the location as well. Programs for your loved ones even after the event. So again, we are big about staying involved with our families and making sure that they are well taken care of. We offer a care line that if it's basically over the phone therapy services, grief therapy for 13 months. So to help them get them through that first year, so that they have that next stepping stone. If they need more from there, that we have options to help them find services as well. And of course, we're all here in the community. I grew up in this area. Annie grew up in this area. All of us are local folks here that are here to take care of our local families. I'm a licensed life insurance agent. I'll just tell you that much right now. That's part of what a pre-need funeral is. All funeral services are put through a life insurance policy. Basically, that is state ordinance. So if, let's say, a funeral home goes out of business, you still have a funeral. So these mom and pops that would prearrange back when and they went out of business, people lost their money. And so the state made sure that all of the funeral homes that do prearrangements are now put them under an insurance-funded funeral. And then, let's see. So it says, Dignity Memorial providers are dedicated to delivering professionalism, compassion, and attention to detail that is second to none. Some of these things I kind of talked about. Like I said, we're the leading brand in funeral, cremation, and cemetery services. Like I said, we have 5 locations here in Wichita. On here it says there's 1,900 providers. There's about 2,400 providers nationwide. We have, I think, locations in every state. We support the families where we live and raise our own families. We honor the ones that serve, and we also like keeping our families safe and of course, comforting those in grief. In your packet as well is a advanced worksheet. And so this actually helps you kind of take those first steps in figuring out what you want. So the first question, of course, is, do you want cremation or burial? And then it goes to, if you want, an urn or a casket, or if you want wood or metal, if you want, a burial. So that's in your packet. If you want to fill those out, that'd be great. And of course, that's the end of my part of the presentation, so I'm going to hand it off to Annie.
We might have had a question. Did you have
Sure.
a question already?
Yeah.
Okay.
It used to be about a 60-40 spread on cremation.
Oh, hang on. We can't hear you.
Okay, just a second. She's coming with the mic. She's coming in hot with it.
We'll hear you. There you go, sir.
It used to be that there was about a 60-40% differential between cremation and burial, with burial being the most
Most common.
Does that still hold, or is it?
No. Probably in the last, I would say, 4 to 5 years, cremation has taken off. We still hold traditional services, but cremation is where a lot of people are turning to. A lot of it is, to be honest with you, is convenience, because it gives time for families to plan that celebration of life, for people to travel in. Cremation itself usually takes place within 3 days to a week, so that gives time for families to kind of get other other things planned out. But yeah, cremation is actually on the rise. It has been kind of since I started, but last probably 3 to 4 years, it really has taken off. We do a lot more cremations than we do traditional burials. Yeah. So did that help answer? Yeah? Okay. Okay.
I'll talk to you later.
Okay.
I wanted to pitch one more thing that Travis was saying about how they have funeral homes nationwide. Steve and I do not know if we're going to stay in Kansas the rest of our lives. So if you do not think you're going to retire in Kansas, your kids live in another state and they're already talking about, well, if one of you passes, we want the other one here, or my daughter in Scotland has already started campaigning for one of us, if one of us passes, the other one to go over to Scotland. Well, at least this way, we have all of our stuff arranged. And if we live in a different state, we can go to a dignity and our money is already paid for there. And some of the other funeral home companies will do that for you in different states, but not all are guaranteed. So you could move to a different state and end up where your pre-need doesn't go with you. And so you want to take that into consideration when you're planning ahead. Are you going to stay here in Kansas or not? So just another thought when you're thinking about who you want to work with in the long run. So.
And speaking about that, we have what's called national transferability. So you move anywhere nationwide, you can transfer your services anywhere basically, like for like. So let's say you bought cemetery spaces here at Lakeview and they were $3,000 a space. You move to Las Vegas where the spaces are $15,000 a piece. They're like for like, so they'd actually give you those spaces at the same price that you'd already paid for.
Yeah.
And the same way with your funerals,
Yeah.
fully transferable.
Yeah. Okay, well, I just want to thank you guys and thank Pastor Susan for the opportunity to come and speak with you guys. Travis takes care of families kind of basically ahead of time, which is great because as a funeral director, coming in to sit down and make arrangements on one of the worst days of your life when you've lost a loved one is very hard, not only on you guys, but also on the funeral directors because when there's no decisions that you've talked to your family about, typically as a funeral director, the arrangement process is going to take around 2 to 3 hours. We have a lot of questions that we go through and we need a lot of answers. And if families don't know what their loved one wanted, whether it was cremation or burial or a service or no service, we kind of have to pull all those details from the family and try to kind of get you through what kind of service would you like? Do you know what they would have preferred? Did you ever have that conversation about cremation? So the big thing I think today is that you have those conversations with your family. That way they know when they are there with us, yes, my loved one preferred cremation. I want to talk about cremation. I want to talk about a celebration of life service. We do many different services at Lakeview. A lot of funeral homes do a lot of different services also. I mean, we do Christian, we do Buddhist, we do Catholic services, we do celebration of life services, we do outside gatherings, inside gatherings, we have like come and go visitations. So pretty much if a family can think of the idea of what they're wanting to do to celebrate their loved one, we're pretty much going to attempt to make it happen. If they're, I've done a lot of different celebration of life services. I'm very passionate about celebrating that person. I don't think Travis would mind, but when Travis's father-in-law passed, his wishes was cremation. So we followed through that. But he also loved fishing. So what we did was we had a boat that we had out at Lakeview that we use for our lake. So I had the guys clean that up, bring it in, and we set up a beautiful celebration of life service with the boat, with the urn in the boat, and it was beautiful. So I want families to think outside the box. Yes, I've been a funeral director for a long time. I come from old school, but I'm in the new. Let's think about what we can do to celebrate. Maybe you love cooking, maybe you love fishing, maybe you love bowling. There's all kinds of different things. I've done many, many different celebration of life services, and it really helps people go through the process of grieving and kind of celebrate, and their friends and loved ones come together and know, yes, this was them. I feel comfortable. This is nice because this is the music they like. This is the food they talked about eating. These are the things. Maybe it's a joke that they share at the funeral. So it doesn't have to be just what we call in the business a cookie cutter funeral where you basically come in, you hear the obituary, you hear 3 songs, you get a brief little eulogy, and then you're off and out, and there goes 90 years of a beautiful life, and what did we celebrate about that person? So the funeral industry has changed. Since I came into the industry, it's really changed, and so now it's really moving into celebrating lives. So I know that that's a lot throughout you at once, but it doesn't have to just be a church service. You can come and have a church service, and then maybe y'all want to, Dad loved, barbecue place. We all want to meet at the barbecue place and let's have barbecue ribs together. Or maybe we have ribs catered in and you guys have ribs together at the church. There's all kinds of things that can be done. So that's just something I kind of want to stress is writing down the details of what you want, or maybe just your favorite things. In those personal planning guides, if you wrote down, my favorite color is pink, I want everybody to wear bright pink flip-flops and Lay's or whatever. It doesn't matter. We're like, okay, we're on it. We'll make it happen. Yeah. So you know what I mean? So maybe you want that over there. Yeah, so we're going to try our best to make sure we put that in the obituary up on our website. Here's a special notice from the family. Please come dressed in hot pink flip-flops if you can find them, or hot pink shirt and Lay's, and we're going to celebrate. You loved Hawaiian music. We're going to come in. We're going to have pineapples, whatever it is. We think outside. So whatever you guys are wanting, the wishes that you write down is something your families are going to look at. We sit across from families and hear a lot of times, well, they didn't want a service. They don't want anything. We just want cremation. We don't want anything else. Okay, I understand that they didn't want that, but what can we do for you to help you grieve and celebrate them? That is very, very important. Whether you hold a service within a month of someone passing or a year from someone passing, you need that process. Your family needs that process of grieving and going through that. Whether it's just a little gathering and you have cookies and coffee. It doesn't matter what you guys do, and it doesn't even matter if the funeral home's involved. As long as you have something, your family needs that opportunity to grieve you. So I know a lot of people say, well, Dad said, I don't want nothing. You just put me in a pine box, put me in the ground.
Don't do it.
Don't do it. We can do the burial ahead of time, and then we can go to the church, or we can go to the barbecue place, or whatever you want to do and have a celebration of life there. You can do everything very simple. We can make it very simple and very beautiful at the same time, right? Yeah. So that was, I think, one thing that you really wanted me to kind of just hint on of thinking outside the box.
I wanna back that up.
Okay.
So my dad sat us down, like I said last week, about 9 months before he passed. And Suze, I don't even want you to fly in, because they were in Alabama and we were in Kansas. And I'm thinking in my head, well, you can try and say that, but he suddenly had a hemorrhagic stroke. We had about 2.5 days with him in the hospital, and he was gone. And when I got there, he couldn't talk anymore because of the stroke, but he looked at me and I thought, my father is angry that I am here. And so I said to him, when my mom and my brother went down to go down to the cafeteria, because they'd been there longer than I had, and I said, Dad, who do you think is going to help get Mom through all of this? I love my brother, but he's an engineer and this is not in his wheelhouse. And at this time I was already a pastor. I had already done this a few times. I knew what was going on. But I also know he had said, I don't want any service. I don't want all the aunts, uncles, cousins, whoever can, flying in from everywhere, and all this sort of stuff. And I was about 3 months into that process and really regretted that we did not have a bigger service for my dad. My mom wouldn't allow my husband or my daughter to fly in from Kansas. She wouldn't allow anyone to come. She didn't tell any of her family really right away. It was the three of us in a church, and it was not the way to celebrate a life. I know you all are like, don't put in the expense, don't put in the time, don't do it, but you know what? That closure, that's why when my mom passed, I had a service for both my mom and my dad. I thought, you know what, y'all can't do anything to me now. And I'm so glad I did. I'm gonna toot Annie's horn a little bit here. I wanted to have white roses, white daisies and yellow roses for my mom. They were her favorites, but then my dad was a real camper. He liked evergreens and pine trees, and because the floral place that they worked with didn't have evergreen in at that time, I swear Annie would have chopped down a tree if she had to. She called around town. She's like, we're getting evergreen. We're getting it in here. She made sure it was part of the floral arrangements because that was important to me, so it was important to her.
Yeah.
And again, those are the things you want to think of when you're going to work with a company. I'm not going to say they're the only ones in town who do a great job, but they do a great job as one of the companies I would highly recommend. So so just please don't put in your notebook, don't have a service for me. Please don't. That robs your family of closure. And then every little detail, like she says, if your favorite color is pink and you want everyone wearing something pink at the funeral, that's a great way to celebrate you. Everybody loves it, right? They love having that direction. And a lot of people even put in, don't wear black. Whatever you do, don't wear black. Wear a color, right? Whatever. Think about these things, because the more it can reflect you. If you'll remember, for my mom and my dad, we ended up having chocolate cream pie and coconut cream pie, because that was my mom's favorite thing. It was such a great way to have a reception. So again, like Annie's saying, think big, think above, think beyond. It doesn't have to be expensive above and beyond. It can be very simple and very inexpensive, but very meaningful to the family. So I just want to back up what they're saying. Don't hold back when you're thinking ahead. And I'm going to go get Jan because she has a question.
Well, it's actually more of a statement.
Okay.
I didn't realize that when my husband passed away, and I told him Hillside mortuary. I was thinking of the one over here, and not the one on Hillside. So the next morning, I went to the one over here looking for my husband, and nobody knew where he was.
Where was that?
So they had to find my husband.
Yeah.
There are no longer two hillsides.
There are not,
by the way.
no.
There's just the one down the
Just the
street
one?
here. The one out
Yes.
east has morphed into one here on the west
Yeah.
side. Yeah.
Yeah, they closed Hillside East and moved it basically into what we call Hillside West, which is here on 13th. So those families, just like we talked about, when a funeral home closes down, if that happens, those pre-needs transfer to one of our other locations, or if a family, decides they want to go to another funeral home, they can transfer that out too. But so a lot of those families transferred theirs to Hillside, like West. But yeah, so yeah, okay.
I think you need to tell us about going to New Mexico on the plane. And our plot is in Tulsa, which I've discussed with Annie.
Yes.
Not sure it's Dignity. That's worrying me.
Okay. Well,
So pass those two things.
Okay. So yeah, Carolyn mentioned if you already have plots purchased, theirs are in Tulsa. The whole family is down in Tulsa. She's not sure that they are from Dignity, but normally Dignity is able to work with any graveside,
Yes.
any cemetery
yeah.
anywhere in the
it doesn't
United
have
States.
to be another Dignity cemetery.
Yeah, the cemetery does not have to be connected to the funeral home. If you want to go to Whitechapel for your burial, but you want Dignity to do the burial, they can make that work. The other thing Carolyn mentioned is you cannot take cremains on an airplane in a metal urn. So again, I walked in with my dad already. You're going to love this. My dad was in a niche in a Lutheran church in Huntsville, Alabama. My mom came here to Kansas. My brother got sent back by work to New Mexico. And we all were like, well, Dad's just sitting there on his own in Alabama. So, because it's a personal thing, right? So the church wrapped him up and mailed him to us, because you're allowed by law to put cremains in the mail. So I come in then to have something for my mom and dad, and my dad's in a metal urn, and Annie goes, you can't take that through TSA if you're going to have him laid to rest in New Mexico. And I'm thinking, crap, you don't think. Well, it's got to go through a scanner. So one of her grave guys busted my dad out, as we say. And we were able to pick a wooden urn to put them both. They both fit in it. They would both fit in the niche we had picked in New Mexico. We could fly them through. There's also paperwork that has to go with them. If your funeral home doesn't know how to fill out the paperwork, it's a nightmare. All of our paperwork was in order. Everything went just as seamlessly as it could when you're having your parents put through an x-ray machine. It was like, it's a little surreal, I'll be honest. But again, go to someone who's knowledgeable and think ahead about some of these things that you might have in your mind. And again, the travel, like Travis mentioned, Steve's parents are in Cyprus, our daughter is in Scotland, and we have family all over the United States. We could be anywhere, literally anywhere when we go. And so to know that we have that travel insurance and they'll bring us back from anywhere in the world if something happens to one of us or both of us was just a huge peace of mind. And for what I'm not going to go into details, but what we paid for that, it's priceless. It really is. It wasn't half as much as I thought it was going to be. So again, talk to people, ask yourself these questions, ask a whole bunch of different places these questions, and then figure out who you want to deal with. Because again, when it happens, like so many other things, you got to know. You're not given any time to stop and think about this stuff. You have to know who's coming to pick up who, what's going on, what's going to happen next. And everyone else who's still left here on earth is in absolute shock. Because it doesn't matter how long you've been preparing. When my dad passed, we were in shock because Mom was always supposed to go first because she had survived stage 4 breast cancer and had lived 25 years longer than estimated by the doctors. When my mom went, though, at 91, we were still in shock. Even though we were in hospice, we were preparing for it. It's just such a difficult time. So plan some more.
Yes.
And sorry, any more questions?
Another one, statement. Dignity did ours when my daughter passed away, but she was in Louisiana, and not knowing anything, that they had to fly her back here, and so Dignity did all the paperwork, and there's no direct flight from Louisiana to Kansas, so she had to spend the night in Dallas.
Dallas.
And that's hard. That's
right.
hard to know that she's sitting in an airport somewhere.
Yeah. Here in Wichita, even though we're the air capital city, to get a loved one in is very hard. There's only about 2 carriers that will bring in your loved ones. So we have to coordinate with the funeral home where they're at to make sure we can either get them close to us into Wichita, or they might have to go in Oklahoma City, they might have to go to Kansas City, and then we have to go up and bring them into our care from there. So Wichita does not make it easy on a family to get a loved one back to us, unfortunately, because there is really only one carrier, because they have to have a pretty big airplane to bring loved ones casketed or brought to us. So yeah.
And all those details add up.
Yeah.
Every leg of that journey is more money.
Yeah.
Let's be honest. No one is going to bring you back for free.
Yeah.
There's a cost involved.
You're looking probably when someone passes, out of state, at least probably $3,000 to $5,000, depending on the funeral home, the preparation that's done there at the funeral home where they passed, and getting a flight booked, and then here, whether we have additional mileage to pick them up at what airport, those kind of things. So you're looking at I would say at least $3,000 to $5,000, depending on where they've passed. Yeah. So
you're at Lake Point. Let's say we want to go to Rust Haven, but we want to deal with you. Are we able to do that, or do we have to specifically go through?
I do, like to meet with me, or to if the death occurs.
Whatever it takes to set up the thing up.
Yeah, Travis and I go to any location. Lakeview is my home location. I have worked for every location in this market, not because they kicked me out of them, but just because of where I moved in my career. So yeah, we can come out and meet you there at Rest Haven. I worked at Rest Haven for about 3 years as a location manager there.
Hillside
so
West
I know
is right across the street.
We will go anywhere that you
meet
want
there.
us to go with our team and meet with you and go over things.
But if you don't like us and you want to work with somebody out there, you're more than happy to do that.
You're more than happy to go out there too. So yeah, they have people to take care of you.
And Hillside West is right across the street. And
Yeah,
they'll meet you there.
yeah.
The way I'm hearing it is, this pre-planning of your wishes, it's not a legally binding, this is what I want to be cremated. My wife doesn't want me to be cremated. It's in my document. I prepaid it.
Okay.
What happens here? They can always.
They can change it. In Kansas, we do not have a form, or some states have a form that you can sign ahead of time that basically says you can't change my wishes from cremation. Kansas does not have that yet. They're working on getting that passed. I don't know how long it's going to take because it's been a while. But some states offer that. So really, in reality, you could pre-need a cremation service with us, and your wife could come in and go, I know he wanted cremation, but I can't do it. I got to have a traditional service. I can't do it.
My cousin
Right.
just last
Right.
weekend said, don't let her cremate me.
So it can be changed. Your spouse could change it. That's one reason you have that difficult conversation with your spouse, because if cremations, you're like, honey, I really, really want this. This is what I want. Hopefully they're gonna go with your wishes. But I have had a few that have changed and went to traditional, and a few that were traditional that changed to cremation, because maybe right now you're like, I really want a traditional service. I want the visitation. I want the full thing, church service and everything. Well, 15 years from now, maybe a lot of your church friends are gone, and your family's scattered, and cremation is maybe a little bit better option to get everybody together. So it can change. It can be changed. So.
And I was going to say, and if you're cremated and she's traditional, you still can be buried side by side.
Yeah.
Or on top of each other.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I want to speak into something that I have been asked. Yeah, okay, I'm recording. That I've been asked quite a few times. What does the Bible say about being buried? It says ashes to ashes, dust to dust. I don't care who prepares your body. I don't care how deep they bury you. You are going to be dust just as much as you were at cremation at some point. God made you from dust the first time. He can do it again. And did we really want to take these bodies somewhere with us at some point in time? So, folks, honestly, just to take some of the stigma out of cremation, I just want you to know God wants you to do what you and your family are comfortable with. He is not judging you about whether you are buried, cremated, put in a lake, whatever you want, under a tree, again, whatever you want to do. The Bible doesn't say you can't do any of those things, if that helps. Who had a hand up first?
She's like, what?
In my will, I'm to be cremated. And you're saying that if she decides she don't want me to cremated, she can change that from my living will?
I don't know if I have an answer to that. I think that's tricky for us to answer. You're in the state of Kansas. Your spouse has to sign the cremation authorization. So if she's not willing to sign that cremation authorization, we can't do anything. Well, we would probably get our legal team involved to check on it for you. But I'm just saying, in Kansas,
wouldn't have that problem.
right? Yeah. I would consult our legal team.
But let's say you don't have somebody like a significant other, or you have multiple children, one thing that you do need to do is make sure that you do have a durable power of attorney with disposition.
Yes.
That means and you give somebody that right to choose what you're going to do. So that
good.
So that's
good. Yeah.
Tell me where life insurance comes into the picture. We pay for these policies for 50 years. But you're saying that when we come to the funeral home, we need to bring payment.
So, okay, so do you want to do
Sure.
that? Okay, go.
So for what I do, we prearrange, and you either make payments on it or you pay it ahead. If you have a life insurance policy, let's say you were to pass away and you don't have anything taken care of, there's what we can do an assignment on your life insurance policy. So basically, let's say your funeral is $10,000, the assignment company is going to take 5% of your life insurance, and in the amount of the funeral they would pay to us in advance. So it would pay it at the time of death. What we do, of course, is we like to conserve insurance for the living. So if you have life insurance, we like to make sure that your living relative or spouse actually has an income. And so that's the reason why we prearrange, because you could have this paid off in 5 years or in one day. It just depends on what you choose to do. Where if you're paying on life insurance, like a burial policy, you're paying on that until you pass away typically. So a lot of these people that see like Colonial Life, that's like sorry to throw a name out there, but $10,000 policy that you pay $80 a month for the rest of your life, and you live for 15 more years, 10 more years, you've a funeral has outgrown that policy, and you've paid for it for the rest of your life. Where if you were to prearrange something and make payments on it, you could have it paid off within 5 years.
So,
Could you speak to the regulations around spreading of the ashes or versus what you said about burying the ashes?
so scattering ashes, you really probably shouldn't do it. And it depends on where you're doing the scattering. I would say if it's like your own your own land that you own, I mean, I think that's what you do there is up to you. I'm sure there's some regulations. We can look it up. You can look up the rules and regulations on the Kansas Mortuary Board of Arts website. The rules and regulations are on there but really scattering, you don't want to do any of that in a national park. Anywhere that is public, really, because they can catch you and probably you can get in trouble. Yeah. That's right. I always tell families if you're going to try to kind of do something, do it at dusk. Put a little in your pocket and whatever you got to do, if that's their wishes. But I didn't say, yeah, be careful with that. So it is really, I wouldn't recommend it, but again, it's going to depend on where you're wanting to do the scattering.
What about the burying? You said that on top of each other or whatever?
So
You still have to buy a cemetery plot?
you'd still have to buy a cemetery space. So each cemetery space typically has interment rights for one person. So if you're wanting to do 2 people in there, you can do 2 urns in there. You'd buy a second right, so that basically gives you a right to bury in that space, because anymore you don't buy land anymore. That way you're not getting taxed on it every year for having property. You're buying interment rights in a cemetery, so you're buying the right to bury in that space. And so yes, you can do. We can stack caskets on top of each other. We can do urns in the same space. You can do 1 urn, 1 casket. You can go side by side. We have cremation gardens that have ground burial, niche burial. We have what's called an ossuary, which is basically, if you're talking about scattering, it's basically an underground vault where people are poured into.
Ashes.
So it's communal. So some people are okay with that. Some people
don't.
aren't.
So it's kind of like spreading the ashes, but it's a place that families the ashes are placed all together. Yes, there are other ashes in there, but it is like more of a garden, so people can come to that area, and there's a little plaque, so it's like a setting area. So it is different. We have above ground, below ground. I mean, there's a lot of different options when it comes to cremation for placements. We have benches, we have niches.
You have an urn that disintegrates.
Yes, we have urns that are like biodegradable. We have urns like if you wanted to be scattered in the ocean and you went to Florida and you booked a yacht and you went out, we have a salt rock urn that will float a little bit and then eventually sink and then obviously dissolve. So there's all kinds of do some research if you're wanting a little bit something different. You can do the research on what you're wanting. If you have questions on anything, I think our cards are in there for you guys to reach out to us with questions. So yeah.
We've already made our plans, and this will shock everybody. Mine's really different.
Okay.
I will be cremated.
Okay.
I have a urn that'll be at the service, but after that, my kids and grandkids are going to put my ashes in baggies and attach them to Big Bang fireworks.
Oh.
And set
Okay.
those off at a time, and it's because I've never had a hot body. I'll finally have that, and I've never been high.
Yeah.
And then I'll go out with a bang.
It's perfect.
Love it.
Yeah.
You didn't hear that. Regine's being attached to fireworks.
Right. Oh, that makes sense. Yeah.
I am going to ask Travis to speak to what you cannot pay for in advance.
Well, you basically can pay for anything. There are things that are not guaranteed. So death certificates, taxes, your obituary. I mean, we can put money aside, flowers. We can put money aside for those things, but it won't guarantee them against inflation. So, I don't know if anybody has done an obituary anytime soon. Your average obituary, little bitty guy with a picture, you're like, what, almost $400?
Close to that, yeah.
In a little bitty paper now. So you never know if there's going to be a paper by the time that you do pass away. One thing that we do is we put all of our obituaries online at no charge.
It could be long, short, yeah.
And your tribute movie can be on there, all that stuff. You know, we don't discriminate on that.
Yeah.
So we can you can do your opening closing, and you can guarantee your opening and closing.
Yeah.
So that's something that when we purchased the cemetery in 14, that we started guaranteeing open and close.
Yeah.
So yeah, you can do your funeral services, your casket, your urn, your memorial packages, your stationery, all of the things that go into your service will be guaranteed. It's just like the things that, like,
the things we can't control the cost on at the time of death. We can't control taxes. We can't control what the state's going to charge for death certificates, what the coroner might charge for a cremation permit. Those things are those items we can't control the cost of. So we don't freeze the cost of those items. So I always tell families, if you're going to do a prearrangement, go ahead and do what I call like a slush fund of money put in towards those items. And then at the time of your death, that gives your family a little bit of cushion to use those for death certificates or an obituary or whatever they're choosing. So that helps with a little bit of having a little extra cost to just go towards those items at the time. So yeah, but what we, like Travis said, what we guarantee are the service costs, your merchandise, which is your casket, your vaults, your urns, your memorial package, those items. Once you write that contract, those are all, cost frozen. I have an example. I mean, I have a family I've worked with just recently. The wife called me and wanted to come back in. She had her contract, and I said, okay, let's sit down. So I crunched numbers with her yesterday, and it was a little bit funny because she said, well, Annie, I just don't understand. Now, your prices have went up this much, and you're telling me I don't have to pay any more, and I feel like I should have had to pay more. And I said, no, because you pre-needed in 2020, and that guaranteed these prices. Well, but these prices on your contract is saying, these are almost $800 more. I feel like I owe you more. I said, you don't owe me more. That's the benefit of pre-planning your funeral, is it freezes the cost. So we had a long conversation about the benefit of that, and finally she worked it out in her mind because paper and numbers was not adding up in her mind because she couldn't figure out how that worked. So we had an hour conversation with her, just trying to get her through to, you're fine. You've taken care of everything. You don't have to pay that balance of the things that go up every year. So.
Sorry. The other thing first, real quick to clarify, when Jan mentioned opening and closing, that's the opening and closing of the ground.
Yes.
At the grave.
Yeah.
At the graveside. Okay, there's an opening and a closing fee. The other thing too, you can add on. Like Steve and I currently have kind of the bare minimum because we know we can go back in and add that slush fund later if we want to, right? We did it according to what we could afford right now. If we want to go in and add a little bit more or change something, we haven't picked somewhere to be buried because we haven't decided where we're going to live or whether we're going to be scattered at this point. Right, you can sign the beginning of all of this and have the majority of it covered, but you can still go back in and you can change and add to that. You'll be paying the prices at that time for the things you add, but you can add. So,
and then one thing, we keep talking about this personal planning guide. It does have in the back here everything that it takes to do a service, from all your cemetery items to all your funeral items. So as you start doing those things, because a lot of people can't afford to do everything at once, and so you can pick and choose what you want to do, and then check those off as you go, and then do a little bit more, and then do a little bit more, and whatever it takes to protect your family.
And I'm going to be super honest, just go and see somebody at one of the dignity places just to get your hands on one of those. But it sounds terrible, but they're super helpful.
Yeah.
Or at least now. So we had 2 ladies here at the church who wrote out their own obituaries, said who they wanted to sing. These were the songs they wanted sung. These are the Bible verses they wanted Rick or I to preach on. I mean, they had everything laid out. I cannot tell you how easily and smoothly those services went compared to someone who has no idea of what just hit them and what they want done. Like Annie said, I have spent 5 hours here in base camp talking someone through all the things about a service because they didn't even for a minute think that tomorrow was the last tomorrow. So, you know, it's the difference between us needing to spend an hour with a family or 5. So the more you can tell them, the more direction you can give them, because your family really wants to do what they can to honor you on that day, for the most part. Most family members do. So when you leave that clear direction, it makes it so much easier for everybody else involved.
Yeah. I mean, no, it's okay. No, it really does help a family. When we sit across from a family and they know exactly what their loved one wanted, and they, you know, have whether it's written out or they've had that conversation, it makes, again, that worst day, one of the worst days of their lives, going through that and making those decisions a little bit easier and a little bit less time with us, because we're not having to ask a bunch of questions.
And hanging out in that room with us is not where they want to be.
No. And most funeral directors, we're not fast at our jobs. We are very efficient. We ask a lot of questions. We want a lot of knowledge. We want to talk about your loved one a lot. So, like I said, even being what we call a seasoned funeral director and in the business for over 20 years, I still take about 2 hours with my families, because I want to make sure if there's any questions, we need to make sure we answer that, and how we want to celebrate their loved one. So, you know, it's just something that, again, like it said, it's a one-time thing. And we hope that we can celebrate, your loved one or yourself the way that you want to be celebrated. And it doesn't have to be inside the box. It can be completely outside of what you want. So
we've run a little overtime again this evening. I'm going to go ahead and pray us out. If you want to stick around and ask some more questions, please feel free to do that. If you need to go, please feel free to go. But thank you all, everybody, for showing up. Again, I tease you all about being signed up, but you don't have to be signed up. Just bring everybody on in. We'll make room. And I just thank you to both Annie and Travis for giving of their time. We appreciate that they just volunteered their time to come down here. And let's pray. Father God, we are so very thankful that you love us, and that here in this place, we know that we get to see you face to face someday. But Lord, we really do want to honor our lives before you. We want to honor our lives with our loved ones, and we need all the help we can get. So Lord, help us to receive this information, to be wise with our decisions from here on out, but also to feel very much at peace, to be reminded that when we meet death, it's going to be a glorious new beginning in Christ. And so we have nothing to fear. So ease our conversations with each other, ease our conversations with our family, bring much peace and much hope and much encouragement into this space. And we lift this time up to you in Jesus' name. Amen.